Hello. So I haven't made a video for a while, and one of the reasons why is because I'm being busy with other things. But I wanted to make this one because I wanted to outline some things out in what I actually metaphysically think, and I've been looking into a lot of different viewpoints in you could say, the occult and the broader pagan community. And there's a lot of, you could say, contradictions to, what is, our indigenous tradition. Like, what do they actually think? What do they actually think before the monotheistic and Middle Eastern influences came in? I've been reading this book here. It's called The Essence of Tertian Sorcery. And it's a very interesting book, and it does outline certain stuff and it mainly focuses on the Terces, which are the fire and frost giants, the elements, the consciousness behind the elements of air and fire. Because air does create ice when it's blown across amount of concentrated water. And the others, the Jotuns, are obviously the water and earth giants. But anyway, so I was reading this book anyway, and it cost me actually quite a lot because there's only a very limited amount of them made. But it gets into the idea of trying to tie it up with Gnosticism. Now, Gnosticism, you could say Stoic Gnosticism, is really an esoteric form of Christianity. And it's basically where they say the Father God is the demiurge, and they say the real God is behind that. And really these whole concepts are not indigenous to Europe. These ideas come out of the Middle East, and a lot of what we would call how we view paganism today is heavily, you could say, monotheized, Christianized, Middle Easternized, whatever you want to call it, or Abrahamicized. And you have people thinking like Wicca, for example, is true European indigenous paganism, and it isn't. Wicca was created in the 1950s by Gerald Gardner, who was a Mason, actually. And it's basically just very low-level Kabbalic teachings, sugar-coated in European pagan aesthetics, and involves, they put the archetype of the goddess there as well, along with the god, and it gets you into this kind of monotheistic, dualistic way of thinking, only this time the dualism's more manifested in imagery instead of just the mono god. But really it's and pretty much now it's just become ritualized feminism. And then you get like neo-druidism. Now, neo-druidism, what we know as today is the ones what dress up as druids and go to Stonehenge on the summer solstice. That is largely actually Christian. But yet again sugar-coated as paganism, and it's Christian because unless they are of Irish heritage, and I mean the true Irish, going back even before the Celts, and have gone into their blood and got the information from there, then they can't possibly revive Druidism, because they buried their knowledge with their own, and with their own bodies. They didn't write any of it down. The what we would call the Celtic myths and the Irish myths were written down after the conversion of Christianity. And yes, there's probably some, truth in there, but it's largely been, to a degree, Christianized, even more than the Norse teachings were written down were. And so we're kind of left with this whole idea of how was our indigenous teachings practiced, because even if you go back into the Viking Age, the whole religious structure in the Viking Age was actually a cutting off of the animism and the pantheism that's required, and only leaves you with polytheism. Now, what happens, and you could actually take this back to Rome. Rome is a great example of this. You go back to Rome, and the problem with Rome is people need to understand there was no really such thing as the Roman race or Roman ethnic group. They were a colony of Greece, basically, of the Hellenics, who went there and, started up a city, and they called it Rome. Rome is more of a urbanized culture, but it welcomed in people from lots of different ethnicities. You had the Etruscans who, came there and they ruled there for a while. You had I think even the Jews also ruled there for a while. And you had all these ethnic groups coming in, and it wasn't just this Rome wasn't really just an ethnic group like you could say the Greeks were. Rome started, and it was quite rootless because it didn't have the animist and pantheist worldview behind the polytheism that, say, ancient Greece had, or the ancient Norse had, or the ancient, Slavic peoples had in Europe. It was solely polytheistic, with no animism or pantheism involved in it. And I think by them doing that, because what they did is they anthropomorphized the planets. So, because you've got to remember, in ancient Greece, they didn't see Zeus as Jupiter. They may have thought that Zeus might have had a connection with Jupiter, like how Thor has a connection with Jupiter. But Jupiter is what I see as the realm of Jotunheim on this physical Midgardian dimension. It's the representation of Jotunheim in the sky. So Jupiter can't be anthropomorphized as a being in a human way, because when you do that, you're basically, and when you also do that and you put all your gods as just the planets, what about all the elements here on the Earth? What about the other natural forces here on the Earth? What about the and yeah, they probably did correlate some inner archetypes, like personality types, into them as well. The fact is what I'm saying is they didn't have a animistic foundation which you need. That is the womb for the polytheism to come out, for the children to come out, which is the polytheism. The pantheism being the masculine, like I said, the animism being the feminine, so the father and mother, and then the polytheism being you and all your brothers and sisters. So basically, what Rome didn't really have they lost their roots. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know what they came from. They didn't know what their parents were. In that sense, their mother or father, metaphysically speaking. So this opened the door for monotheistic influences to start coming in, and this is why Middle Eastern groups such as the Jews came in, because they adapted there very well, because monotheism could easily fill that void which the animism and pantheism provided. So it's a bit like you got to see it like this. It's a bit like someone who grows up without parents, right? And then suddenly the monotheism, this father figure, starts coming along, and it lures them into joining a gang or something like that. You see this with youths that grow up, motherless, most of the time fatherless, but even if it's motherless as well as that, they go into these gangs because that provides that, especially for men, it provides a father archetype. Because that father archetype is still going on within there. They're seeking that. And I think this is what the monotheism allowed to infiltrate that very easily. So, yes, you get... So, getting back to the monotheism basically filled that void. And this is why Christianity was so successful in Rome, because it only had that polytheistic structure without the animist or pantheist foundations. And this is what I'm saying. This is precisely what happened in the Viking Age. The shamans, who understood very well the pantheist and animistic nature of the Trinity of Logos, were cut off, were killed at that time in the Viking Age. And this allowed for a organised religion to come out of that, a structural religion, a religion with a priesthood and a king. You've got to see what this is. Let's go back. See, priesthoods and kings, in the sense, started within the Middle East, in places like Samaria and Egypt and Babylon. This was because, for example, when the Sumerians went to war with the Egyptians, they went to war mainly with their shamans. And they cut off the shamans from their, they basically, annihilated the shamans like they did with all the other cultures. And out of that became the king and the priests, which was really this splitting of what the shaman was into two. And it dealt with the religious, the priestarchy, the religious, and the monarchy, the political. And they are the two things you need to control. One controls the soul or the heart, the religion, and one controls the mind and the body, the political. And that's to all the control structure. This has basically gone on, and it's basically came out of the Middle East and spread throughout all of Europe, and then just gone out to the rest of the world. And it's gone around destroying any of the animist cultures and replacing it with so-called organised religion and politics. And what you have to do there is you have to sever the archetypes from their roots. You cut out the archetypes from their roots, allow them to have those archetypes to lure them in, but slowly enclose them into a congregative space to worship those archetypes, to get down on your knees and be a slave to them. You don't need to be a slave to these archetypes. It's like these archetypes are just symbolic representations of your brothers and sisters. That's what they are. They're imagery. They're imagery to understand archetypes, or even what you would call in the modern day stereotypes. I don't really like using that term, but let's just use it for now. To understand that, to help you navigate through life. It's like if you meet someone and they're acting like Loki, you might think, right, I'm going to keep my shield up about this person. If you meet someone who's like 4, you might be a lot more laid back with them because you know that they're not, trying to deceive. They're more honest and straightforward in that sense. So this is what I'm trying to get at. It's this. People just think like it started just with Christianity and that's where everything went downhill. And I would agree with that to a large degree. It was. That was the really, age of absolute darkness and ignorance. I would agree with that. But it goes back even further. Maybe we weren't as in a state of ignorance as we were when we were in Christianity, but it was still in its kind of 50-50 phase, if you get what I mean. It was halfway there. It's just when we went into the Christian era, we really went into a dark place. And now we come to the modern era, and what you have now is where it's really religion has been replaced. You still have the politics, and the politics is even replaced by not so much having a king on a throne, but more having elected group of people making decisions. And on the other side, to basically fill that void with the religious, you have a mix of New Age spirituality and scientism, you could say. And what I mean by scientism is not science. I mean it's more like the worship of the scientific method. This belief in that anyone who has a PhD under their name must be telling absolute truth and you can't question it. And it's the same with the New Age gurus as well. Whatever they say, whoever is the guru of the New Age, of whatever New Age cult, whatever they say is unquestionable truth because they have, the consciousness of some alien being or something in them, some Pleiadian in them, and they're like basically a god come down to heaven, like a Jesus type figure. And so really that's kind of replaced that. So we live in kind of the secular modern world, but we really still have the same things. It's just less obvious. It's less put out there in the open. It's more pretends to be something and it's not, because it's not so focused on just one individual. There's many individuals you can choose from. And people say this is the same as polytheism then. Well, no, it's not really, because what they're playing on is those archetypes we inherited down from Christianity. If you look at New Age gurus, a lot of them are just pretend to be like Jesus. You look at a lot of these scientists, a lot of them are like the clergymen, just, packaging what they're saying in a more logical, rational way and a scientific way where they say, and an atheistic way. Don't you see how the modern era, the secular era is just the secular Christian era? And I think what's happening is we're coming out of, that now. And like I say, we're going into the Aquarian age from the Piscean age. The Piscean age was the Christian age. It was the age of Christianity. Even if you want to say Christianity, what about Islam then? Because that was just as prominent. Well, Islam is just Christianity. Muhammad added on to the end of it. So, what I'm saying is Christianity as the idea of the Christ force has been the overarching theme of the Piscean age. And so the Aquarian age, the you could say, because what really Pisces represents is it represents dualism and spirituality and the unconscious. And I think the reason why they you could say whatever you want to call them, the dark elves, the dark ones, the jinn, whatever you want to call them, the reason why they targeted that age specifically, because if they could invert the spirituality, and if they can invert spirituality in an age what was very, you could say, spiritual in a sense, what was meant to be very spiritual, but it was an inverted form of spirituality, that could really change man's psychology and how he thinks. Because back in the Age of Aries, it was, all about strength and power. And the way of thinking back then was, if you were weak, that was seen as their version of evil, or bad, or something you really didn't want to be. Whereas in the Piscean Age, selfishness became evil, and selflessness became good, in the same way in the Age of Aries, strength and weakness. Because you can see the symbol of the ram, it's this symbol goes like that, and it's splitting, so it's going into dualism, but not into another form, from another form of dualism. It's the strong against the weak, whereas Christianity is the selfless, the two fish, the selfless and the selfish. And obviously selfishness, really, if you look at Satanism, which is just, the left-hand path of the Christian paradigm, it really is ultimately about selfishness, and Christianity is also ultimately about selflessness. With the age of Aquarius, the Aquarian, it's a water bearer pouring out the water, and that water is information. It's the information being poured onto the mind and soul of humanity. And it's also got themes of technology and scientific advancements and stuff like that. And I think what the shamanism I want to revive, what's going to revive, is going to have to explain itself in an also scientific way than just a artistic way. It's going to have to explain itself scientifically, and it's going to have to incorporate a lot of science into it. And this is what I'm working on now, of getting looking into history and stuff like that, and trying to see how the mythology and the lore of my ancestors fits in with rational scientific history. And I think what it will be is like I think what is going to be the kind of a Navy way of what's seen as, Navy, what's seen as good and bad or good or evil in the Aquarian Age could well be intelligence v stupidity. If you're stupid, then that's seen as something you really don't want to be, and being intelligent is what good. It's the good thing to be, because we're kind of moving along this. You don't have to be completely selfless or completely selfish. You can kind of combine the both. Whereas in the Piscean Age, it was, if you were anyway selfish, it was seen as really a really bad thing. Like, it was seen, as you're evil. If you have any self-interest. Of course, the fucking king was allowed to be as selfish as he wants, because they didn't question that, because it was, he was the lieutenant of the god on Earth. And the priesthoods as well, as actually, because they were just the, intermediaries between that. And so now this gets back to what this whole, what I wanted to say in this actually video was, how do we revive our own shamanic animistic tradition, what incorporates the pantheistic and polytheistic elements as well within it? Well, we need to kind of evolve it. We can't just go back to how it was just before the priestarchy and monarchy took over. Or you could say, the Dark Elves took over, or the Jinn, whatever. We kind of have to look at it from, we kind of have to evolve it. Like, we kind of have to move on, and because it's an ongoing and evolving thing. And so what I would say is, people who are getting into paganism and stuff like that, is don't try and go back to how it was in a previous age, because what it wasn't in a previous age before that wouldn't have been the same as another age before that or another age after that. It's an ongoing, evolving thing. And now we live in a different world. We live in a world of technology. We live in a world of where I can upload a video like I'm doing onto the internet and people can watch it from the other side of the world, or I can talk to someone from the other side of the world. It's a very different world we're living in right now. And people say, like, oh, there's going to be this tipping point when, sometime in a decade or two, technology is just going to go down. I don't think so. It's going to stay here. It's part of the zeitgeist of the age we're moving into, and there's nothing we can do to change that. But what we can do is we can stop the inversion of what happened within the Piscean age, especially, and what even happened in partly some of the previous ages before, partially, is not let it go down that same road. And I think with this whole thing of, like, transhumanism, like, putting technological devices into your own body and getting hooked up to 5G and going into virtual realities and all this stuff, I think this is the inversion coming. And I think some people are going to go into it straight, going to go straight headfirst into it. But if it never becomes the overwhelming majority of people, then I think we're going to be okay. And recover from it quickly. And so what I'm saying is, like, we need to have a more, instead of just having a more approach, which is, we kind of have to prove what our ancestors knew scientifically. And I know that's kind of hard to do and everything, and it's very difficult, and it's very, I'm not an actual scientist or anything, but we're going to have to try and integrate it into rational science, because this age we're moving into, it is going to be very scientific, the way things are explained. And we're going to have to rationalize it as well. In the past, we didn't have a consciousness that was very scientifically thinking. This is part of our own evolution. We have to go through these various zeitgeists, these very epochs, to understand our own how we evolve. Of course, I think that actually we have been regressing for a short period. We are regressing in some ways for some time. But I think we can actually just make it out of that now. Because, like I said, if you look at the Kali Yuga, it's coming to the end of the Iron Age, and these certain powers that want to rule over us, they're not actually all that powerful. Really, what it comes down to is it's just these entities who just operate outside visible light, who aren't as powerful as us, but they kind of make you think that they are, trying to fucking control you, and they're meat puppets on the physical level who are in positions of power. They're just completely infected by them, and they have no mind of their own, because they're just, puppets, just literally empty husks for them to go into in and out of them. And when you kind of look at it like that, and you don't look at these entities as anything like they're more powerful than you, because they're not. They're actually incredibly scared of us when we realise they're there. See, I can see them. And now when I fucking look at them, and I look at them straight in the eye, they actually fear me, and I no longer fear them. Because they know they're there. They're like someone walking around in a place they shouldn't be in an invisible cloak, and no one else can see them. I'm the one who turns around and I look at them and I can see you. And they get fucking shocked by that. They're shocked by that because the potential could realise that everyone could start seeing them. And once that happens, once everyone realises that they're just operating behind visible light, that's it. That's fucking game over for them, and they won't be able to do anything about it. They can't hide behind the invisible cloak anymore they put themselves in. Because they're fucking weak, they're fucking dying, and they're not as strong as they used to be, basically. And if you really want to get touching with your pagan roots, even if you don't want to go into practicing shamanism or the occult or anything, the best way to do it is just to actually just walk through nature, walk through observe nature for what it is, and then start looking at the artwork and the stories of your ancient ancestors. And that's a way of first getting into it. And then maybe if you want to start looking into the more esoteric and occult aspects, after you've done that, you can. And this is how. But the occult and the esoteric aspects do require a level of, like I said, scientific thinking, because ultimately these are sciences and are arts and sciences, and in the way we have to become scientific, we also have to become artistic as well. We have to combine this of art and science at the same time, and you do that by presenting what you found in a creative, artistic way. Because the problem with the science we have now in the institutions is it has no time for the artistic side of things, or that more irrational part of our mind, what wants to basically not see things, doesn't have to be explained, doesn't have to be rationalised. And we kind of need that as well. And I think we especially need that at the age we're going into, because if we just go to just the scientific mindset, purely scientific, 100% logical, everything has to be rationalised and logicised and explained, that could be very dangerous. Because what we do is we start becoming imbalanced. And like what I see now is of the Piscean age, it was very much about the irrational, the things that don't need to be explained. Like, you can't really rationally explain the stuff what's said in the Bible, for example. You can't really join that up to rational science. It's ridiculous. But they still do it, try and do it today even. Like, the scientists of today, they never fucking admit it because they probably don't even conscious that they're doing it, but they always try to mould their science with the Christian paradigm. And I think what you could see potentially in this Aquarian age, if it does go wrong, is this kind of also thinking that the logical, the ultra-logical, the ultra-rational is what's good, and the irrational or the illogical is the enemy. And I think this may be why Christianity is, and well, just all religion in general, so attacked by these hardcore scientism atheist types, is because they literally see it as something that needs to just go. And if that goes, then we can go straight forward into this utopia. But what they question to leave out is man needs that transcendency, and he also needs it through what art makes him feel things. The art that makes you feel things, and causes that transcendency. Man needs that. And they can't understand this. They're just like robots. Completely, these people are just basically robots. They're robotic in their way of thinking. They don't get into the whole feeling side of things, or they don't really. It's like they're scared of their emotions. They're scared. They're scared of the irrational sides of man. They want to think that man is purely a rational being. But essentially, what that leaves you is you're just a robot then. And this is what these atheistic scientism nerds are like. They can't, obviously, like the symbolism. They don't get symbolism or archetypes. It's like they have never had a spiritual experience in their life. And also, what it comes down to is when, with like the science we have now, it keeps having to. I think I heard actually, I think I heard Dr. Phil Valentine say something like this, like in science has to keep reimagining everything because it discovers something that wasn't there before, so it keeps has to reimagining everything. And this takes you into like a linear perception of time that like with each progressive like step of like going further and further along the road, you have to keep reimagining what reality really is and how things work. So you can't just. So there isn't a sense of eternal. There isn't a sense of what is eternal, what is eternal truth. And that's the problem what we have with the science we have today. It keeps trying to hone in and trying to almost dissect reality, but really fails to actually explain the eternal truth of what reality is. Then you get also into this idea that man just evolved sometime from an ape, and that's fucking ridiculous. The reason why we may look similar in some way to apes now is because apes are one of the highest evolving forms in the mammal kingdom. But man, or human, has always existed, walking side by side the animate life forms. The animate life forms are extensions of our own consciousness, and we learn from them. They're more like animate forms that are within our soul, projected out onto the world. And yes, the human species has always existed. It probably looked very different from what it looks like now. We probably didn't look as mammalians we look now. There was a time where we probably looked a lot more. Well, I think there's probably a time where we just looked more etherical, and then when these different of evolution genetics came into our system from probably different consciousnesses what were being put on Earth. This gave rise to, the reptile, the avian, the mammalian, also the insectoid as well back in the past, and I think these things kind of like helped evolve our own genetics in a sense, because it all came down within us first, and then it just got projected out. And this is why you see go back to prehistory, and you see a time before they supposedly say man didn't exist. And the reason why they say this is because they can't find any fossil evidence of there being any traces of humans, say, back in the dinosaur times. But we didn't used to die. That's the thing. Humans only started to... Their bodies only started to die around the time we started mixing in with the Neanderthals, or the dwarfs, or the Duga. And there was many other versions of this on different continents, so it's just I'm coming from the European perspective. But when we started to mix in with the Neanderthals, our bodies started to basically, not live forever. But before that, they did. And these whole thing of the Homo erectus, saying that's basically our closest link to the humans, is a load of shit, because that was just a fucking ape. It wasn't. Humans didn't evolve from that. Or maybe it might have not been an ape. Maybe it was what the Neanderthal was in Europe. That was in Africa, so it was like the dwarfen race in Africa, something like that. But it wasn't. We didn't evolve from these. We didn't evolve from apes. It's ridiculous. The whole, because the whole point of it is like, if we didn't exist around the time of the dinosaurs, the human consciousness didn't exist, then we wouldn't ever be able to even imagine it or comprehend it. Don't you see this now? I'm going to make a whole video series kind of detailing out all of this. But human consciousness wouldn't be able to comprehend that. And we didn't used to die, we used to evolve ourselves further and further and further. Like that, going round in the cycles and cycles of evolution. And it's when certain cataclysms came about that certain continents sunk down beneath the waves. We started mixing in with the dwarven races from underground, because back then we were the alpha, the pure alpha. And when that happened, you could say that man was then born. It's interesting because in the Lord of the Rings, you have Aragorn, who's man, and beside him stands Legolas and Gimli, the elf and the dwarf. Because that's what's within us. Our genetics are elven and dwarven. Every single human being today on the planet is that. And at the moment we have been in a 45,000 year cycle, and like I said, we're coming to an end of that now. We're nearing an end of it. And I think this 45,000 year old cycle goes back to when Samaria infiltrated Egypt, and from there just spread out across the world to dominate it. And that's what has happened. But now that is nearing to an end, or coming to, it's ended already, probably. And whether we'll get caught up in it again, or we're going to break free from it, I'm not 100% sure about yet. But these are just things I wanted to talk about. I don't want to make this video just tie down to one subject, because I think I haven't been active here on YouTube for a while, so I just kind of wanted to just generally talk about stuff.